Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the completion of the project and getting it onto the market. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through some. Oh, I'll just check I'm recording. Sorry. Yep, I'm recording. Go through some of the considerations, things you need to do once you get to the end of the project before you actually put it on the market or sell. And I guess the first thing is to check your insurance and make sure you're adequately covered, because now the property is a lot more valuable than it was when you started. So you need to make sure that that's in place. And also occupation certificate. Now, you only need this if you've had to apply for approval, and you'll need to get a final inspection and sign off as required by your renovation approval. Now, if it's a complying development, the certifier will do this. But if it's a DA, then a council inspector will do it. Once you have the OC, you can put the property on the market. Sorry, OC is occupation certificate. And before you do that, you need to organise a contract of sale. Now, it depends a lot on what state you're in. Like in South Australia, they have a one-page contract which the agent looks after, and that takes you up to exchange, and then the other details get sorted out with the solicitor. But in New South Wales, it's not, and so we have to go to a lawyer and get that contract drawn up before we can put the property on the market. So that's the next thing. The other thing that we do is prepare an owner's manual with all the documentation for the property to hand over to the new owners. In this, you'll have things like the warranty details on appliances and all the additions, instruction manuals, contact details for various suppliers. I always like to put the security company in there so that if they have any issues with access codes or whatever, they can ring them directly, because if they're trying to track you down, well, basically once you've had handover, you really don't want to be getting phone calls. I also give them the builder's phone number so that they can ring the builder direct. And a copy of the homeowner's warranty. Although that does go via the solicitor, I always like to keep hard copies in the manual as well to hand over to the new buyer. And the next thing you need to do is get a clean done before you have your first open, and you really need to it needs to be better than just a normal domestic clean. There are specialist builders cleaners, and what they do is like a detailing. And the reason why you need to get specialists is because if you have a normal domestic cleaner, they're not really clear on how to manage things, building spoils, basically. If you've got mortar, or hopefully you won't have, but if you have specks of mortar or paint on windows, you want that removed without scratching. Thanks for sending the email, Yvonne. So I've had domestic cleaners, and they did so much damage on the windows. I certainly wouldn't make that mistake twice. Also, building cleaners, they know to look for detail. Like they'll vacuum out all the runners in the doors, the door sliders and around the windows. Okay, is that okay, Yvonne?
Yep.
Okay, great. And vacuum around the windows, and just really do a very detailed clean before you take it to market. Now, your goals with selling are to get the highest price in the shortest time. Okay, so pricing the property is important. Too low and you risk leaving too much money on the table, and too high and you'll put your buyers off. Now, the research will tell you what that price should be, and you will discuss it with your agent as well to make sure he's on board with that, but you will have a good understanding of what the price is. And then we allow 6 weeks to sell and 6 to 8 weeks for settlement. If it takes any longer than 6 weeks, well, then you need to rethink your strategy, and which brings me to the concept of having a plan B. Always have a plan B. Generally, it's to rent it if it doesn't sell for a fair price. My view is I always like to sell regardless of what, as long as it's in the black, I like to sell, because I just think if you, sort of sitting around wondering whether you should take it back on the market in a few months, unless it's suitable for a long-term investment, which these sort of projects tend not to be. They tend to be done, with a different end in mind. But that's obviously a decision that you need to make. So moving on to the next slide, which is the variables. Now, the thing with selling a property is you really need to control as many things as you can possibly control for the best outcome. And the way I see it, these are the variables that you have some sort of say over. So firstly, there's the timing, then the agent you select, the sales method and the presentation. I just want to interrupt for a minute and say I'm really sorry to everyone for the mix-up with the login details. Some things don't change, but it's really nice to see you here now, and I'll make sure that you get the recording. And I'm sorry last week's isn't up yet. I've just been a bit busy. Anyhow, so the first thing is timing. Now, I think the first thing I'd say is don't take it to market until you're absolutely ready to take it to market. If it means another week, even though time is money, it is way better to be to have it completely ready than being going to market when it's not completely finished. To give you an example, our last job, the guy that was supplying the roller door actually went belly up. I rang a few days before it was due to arrive just to check on it, and discovered that they had gone along with my panel lift door order. And so it took another 3 weeks to get one in. And people were saying to me, why don't you just put it on the market? And the reason I didn't is because the first impression is the most important, and I would rather wait and have it looking absolutely perfect than go off half done and not get a good result. So that's what I did. We sold in 30 days and it was perfect. So as far as timing is concerned, obviously you don't have a lot of control with this because it's when you buy the property determines when you sell it. But I'll just talk a bit about different times and my observations of different market conditions. The best time is early spring. Now, if you can get on the first week, the first open in spring, that's the absolute best time because there's been very little stock over the winter, and traditionally everyone knows that spring is the selling season. So that first open, a lot of people have been hanging out to try and find a property to buy, and so if you're there, then you have got the best odds. The thing is, a lot of people can't get their act together to get there. Sometimes that's me, to get there for that first open. So often there aren't that many properties still there. And if you've got a good property, then you're going to be in the box seat. Winter's not too bad because of the fact that there's not too many properties on the market, but it's sort of a different scenario. There also aren't that many buyers because the buyers are, traditionally know that winter's not a great time to buy. However, there are some people that have to buy a property, so they're there at those times. The other time that I like is post-Christmas, about 3 weeks into January, when everyone's come back from Christmas holidays, they've all charged up with their New Year's resolutions and really on fire, ready to find a place to live. People relocating, people wanting to find a place before their kids get settled back into school. So that's quite a good time too. Midsummer has some problems in that, it can sometimes be stinking hot and nobody wants to come out to opens. But if you've got a property that's really set up for the summer, like got nice indoor outdoor, it's actually a really great way to showcase it. And obviously you have to have good air conditioning, and certainly in the really hot summer days, I like to get in and get the air conditioning going well and truly before the open, so that the house is nice and cool and not uncomfortable. Okay, selecting an agent. Now, I've got a little ebook on this if anyone is interested, and I'll post it up on the replay page. But you're not really looking for a company, you're looking for a person, because really in real estate, it's all about personalities and relationships. So you want to get the person that's the most successful agent in your area. It's important that that agent is local, or not so much is local, but has really good local knowledge. In actual fact, the agent that we use doesn't actually live in the suburb, but he has been working in this suburb for about 20 years, and he's very good because they really need to understand the suburb and the movings of people and whatever. So do your research on your agents. I can give you a lot of information on how to research an agent if when you get to that stage. Interview the agents. Things you're looking for are things like the amount of similar properties that they've sold in a similar location, like close by in the surrounding streets. Review the terms of their contract. Don't give them an open check. I like to give them a contract for about 6 weeks. I figure that gives them, if you're going to auction, normally you auction after 4. And if by some chance it doesn't sell, they've got another couple of weeks. But seriously, if they can't sell in that period of time, you need to rethink your strategy. Okay, so we're on to the campaign, auction versus private sale. What I'd say with this is you really need to look at what goes on in the suburb, because you need to go with a mode of sale that your buyers are comfortable with. If most properties are auctioned, then that's what you do. And if not many are auctioned, then you go for private sale. And also gauge it on your agent's strengths. You know, some agents, and I'll refer to our agent in particular, he's an amazing negotiator. So I know that he works really well selling in a private sale, because he can negotiate really well. You mark your price and he will, that's really what he works at. But it does depend a bit. Once you get to know the agents, and you'll find this out in your due diligence and your research, that you know, some of them are better at some aspects than others, and it doesn't mean that they're a bad agent. They've just got different strengths. Okay, there's some almost dodgy auction practices that do go on. Underquoting is something that I find very baffling. Some agents recommend very low buyer's guides and that is very effective in creating a lot of interest. I know it's not something that I really think is all that ethical, and by law they're bound to quote within 10% of the value of the property, but that is actually quite hard to police. Advertising. Some agents will recommend that you spend a lot of money on advertising, and these days that's absolutely not necessary. Most people looking for a house will go to the internet as their first port of call, and so that's absolutely essential. But before even that, actually I'll talk about photos in a minute. So the other place that I would make sure that you advertise is in the local paper. We always advertise in the local paper because it lies around hairdressers, and you know, most people like to look at their local paper. It's quite cheap to advertise in. Normally I allow about $3,000 for advertising, so that's generally 1 full page in the local paper and 2 half pages. And obviously some agents like to spend a lot more, but a lot of that's about building their profile and not necessarily in the best interests of your property sale. The other thing is you can have a building and pest report prior to taking it to sale or auction. Particularly with auction, I generally have a pest report, don't always have a building report, because I think most buyers like to have their own building report. But if you're going to auction, you might consider that just in case someone turns up on the day and wants to bid and hasn't actually done that. But that really is a personal thing